The following program sponsored by Adams Financial Concepts.
About money, a different approach to investing you won't hear anywhere else. Your host, Mike Adams, is a registered investment advisor and works with investment portfolios exceeding over $100,000 in net worth, and has a proven track record of managing long-term investments surpassing the markets in the long term. The information shared on the following program is for educational purposes only, and any investment advice given may not be suitable for all investors. And now, here's Mike.
It's Friday afternoon, and we're going to be talking about money. You know, one thing that's been interesting in this whole thing is the market has come down and it's slid down and we're into kind of a correction, is to hear the people that are talking and saying, I predicted this. I remember going to a conference in May where people were predicting this. People have been predicting a correction and now they're taking credit for it. You know, it's always interesting to me when people predict a correction, because in 20 of the last 36 calendar years, there's been a correction. You know, you can start a year and predict a correction, and you're going to be right more often than you're going to be wrong. It's not rocket science to say that there's going to be a correction. They happen. Let me come back to that. But first I want to tell you about B740 Studios. They were on the program a couple weeks ago, and after being on the program, they are making an offer of 15% discount to for any projects you may have that you book in September or October. Actually, we're coming to the end of September, but for the rest of this month or next month, they have an accomplished staff of filmmakers. If you heard the program, you know what they do. They have filmmakers, they have designers, they have writers, they have editors. They're set up with producers. They'll do print, broadcast. They're architects of moving images. Very, very accomplished, very, very specific, and they can really do a fine job for you. And 15% off. All you have to do is say you heard about this on Adams Financial Concepts. So call, check B47 Studios. They have a website. Check the website and go ahead and get a significant discount. So there was an article in Financial Advisor magazine in the middle of this month, talked about corrections coming along. And that's kind of a humorous kind of thing, because predicting corrections is like predicting the weather. You know, I can predict that we're going to have snow in Seattle. That is almost a sure thing. I can't tell you whether it's going to be in 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, but I'm pretty sure that we're going to have snow in Seattle. Predicting a correction is a lot like that. Predicting we're going to have a correction is 20 out of 36 times in the earth, 20 out of the last 36 years, there's been a correction. But this article went on to talk about Floridians and hurricanes, because once you've lived through one, you begin to feel a sense of having been there, having done that. And it talked about a list that they made about hurricanes. It was actually two lists. The first list, a to-do list. First to-do list was to listen to the Weather Channel, to buy batteries, to set up your evacuation kit, to buy water, and do all those things. Those were the things that were serious and things to do. The second to-do list, on that second to-do list, you could tell these people have been through a hurricane. The second to-do list was buy vodka, complain, plan a hurricane party, speculate if work's going to be canceled on Monday, buy more vodka, and so on and so on. That was the second list. You know, once you've been through it, once you've seen it firsthand, theoretically, the theoretical becomes reality. The intangible becomes intangible. And scary things are not so scary. Once you've been through a couple corrections, you know this is the normal kind of thing that's going to happen. We're going to finish this correction and we're going to move on. I'm a believer that history doesn't repeat, but that it rhymes. And I think there's lessons to be believed from previous markets. If you go back to 1966, the Dow hit 1,000 for the first time. Actually, 999.9, but close enough to 1,000 we can say that it hit 1,000 for the first time. That was 1966. The Dow had come 1941, it had been 100. It increased tenfold from 1941 to 1966. That even during and after the war, from 1949 1950, the Dow was at 200. And it increased during that time in 16 to 17 years. It increased fivefold. That was a strong market. That was a real bull market. That was a going bull market. And then we came to 1966 and the market peaked. And in 1966, the market peaked and then it began to drop. And during the fall of 1966, it dropped 20%. That's more than we're seeing in a correction. It actually dropped 20%. And then it began a rally in late 1967, 1968, it began a rally. And it hit, in the last few months, it hit 1,000 again. You know, it had gone to 1,000, dropped 20%, then it roared back to 1,000. And in late 1968, it started another plunge down, and by mid-1970, it was down 30%. So it had gone down 20, it had gone down 30, and then it began another rally. And by the end of 1972, it was back to 1,000 again. The market rolled over by 1974, and this time it rolled down 40%. So you had down 20%, down 30%, down 40%. And by early 75, it was back up to 1,000 again. And then by 1978, it was down to 780. It had dropped 22%. Then something happened. It began to climb again, and by August of 1982, it hit 1,000 again. And you had any number of people predicting it was going to roll over. After all, 1966, it hit 1,000, went down 20%, then it went down 30%, then it went down 40%, then it went down 22%. People were predicting, here we go again. But something happened in August of 1982. It didn't go down again. It began a climb. It began a climb that ended at almost 14,000 in March of 2000. You know, but during that period of time, we had corrections. We had the corrections like in 1987 and 1990. We had corrections during that whole time period from 1982 to 2000. Every other year practically we had a correction. 94, we had a correction in 98, we had a correction in 86. You know, that was just kind of the way things go. That was a time when we saw that bull market roar 14-fold from 1,000 to 14,000. Now, if you set that against the time frame of March of 2000 to 2009, 2010, we saw the market hit 14,000, then begin to drop, and it would drop any number of times. It would drop once, climb back up, drop, climb back up, drop, climb back up. You remember that period of time because it created a lot of fear, culminating in 2007, 2008, 2009, when the market got all the way down to 6,600 plus, and then began to climb out to today. It's over 16,000, down from 18,000. We're in a correction, no question about it. But that's the way things happen. I can remember in September of 99, I gave a talk to Rotary. And every year, University Rotary Club would invite me to talk about what was going to go on in the market. And I would usually talk about this problem and this worry and that worry. And I would predict, the market likes to climb a wall of worries, and it's going to continue to climb up, and we're probably going to be higher at the end of this year. Barring a correction, we're going to be higher at the end of this year. But even if we have a correction this year, then it'll probably pick up next year. That was my prediction, never knowing for sure, but seeing that things are moving forward. But in September of 99, I made a comparison between Archibald Young, when he began to raise rates in 1928, and Greenspan, when he began to raise rates in 1998 and 99. Both times, It was to control asset inflation, not consumer inflation. And both times, it resulted in a bear market. Both times, the market came down more than just a correction amount. And both times, it set in a long-term secular bear market. Now, when I was talking in 99, I didn't know for sure we were going to see. And I said at that time, if the bull market is counted from 1982 to 2000, bear markets usually last about half as long as bear markets. Bear markets last about half as long as bull markets. I'll get that right. If it started in 82 and it finished in 2000, that's about 9 years, so that by 2009 it'll be over. And if it started in 79, that's 21 years, and we can expect it to go into 2010, 2011. Well, 82 to 2000 was 18 years, and what we saw was 2000 to 2009 was approximately 9 years. And that's what we actually saw. Then what happens? You end up into a secular bear market. When you look at what's going on, things are not the same as 1982 or the 80s or the 90s, but they're similar. We're coming to a commercial break. I'll come back and finish this because I think there's information to be learned. Corrections do not last. I'll be right back after the break. Stay with me.
Stay tuned. About Money returns in a moment with Mike Adams here on Business Radio 1300 KKOL. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
Lots of people manage investment portfolios. Just a few can manage a successful portfolio and provide exceedingly great service to their clients. Here's Mike Adams from Adams Financial Concepts.
We believe the price you pay should be based on the performance of your portfolio and the quality of service you receive.
Mike, it seems that a lot of companies subscribe to the one-size-fits-all mentality of investing. Does one size really fit all?
Not with us. Every portfolio that we manage is customized to fit each particular client's objectives and risk tolerance. We place our clients' interests first in all portfolio decisions.
If you're looking for a home for your 7-figure plus investment portfolio, call Mike Adams of Adams Financial Concepts, specializing in creating and maintaining wealth for over 20 years. 206-903-1019. That's 206-903-1019. Or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
We're back with more about money. For details on what you hear on today's show, visit adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Now, here again is Mike Adams.
So I've been talking about what's going on. We're in a correction right now. That's a normal kind of thing that happens in the market. For all those people who've been predicting a correction, they're right. But then almost anyone could guess that there was going to be a correction, just like anybody can guess that sometime in the next 30 days it's going to rain, or the next 60 days, or the next year, or the next 2 years. You can be pretty right. You can also be pretty right if you make the same prediction that the sun is going to come out. I mean, predicting corrections, that's part of the market. The market in 20 out of 36 of the last calendar years has gone through a correction. It shouldn't be a surprise. And some of the years in which we haven't gone through a correction are some of the most recent years. We've climbed out of this pit we were in 2008, 2009, and we've had a remarkable recovery market-wise, with the market tripling in value. And then to see a correction is not a big deal. But there's differences this time with what's gone on. I've been talking for the last 5 years about a study that was done by Standard Chartered Bank out of the UK, large bank, and they identified periods of time in world history when there's been a supercycle, when the world GDP grew faster than average, significantly faster than average. Period of time from 1870 to 1913 when the world GDP grew much faster than the average, and that was driven primarily by the industrialization of the United States. went through the Civil War. We came out of the Civil War. Things began to change. We began to move from an agricultural society to an industrial society, and that had an impact on the rest of the world. But the second supercycle came in 1945 to 1970, and that was driven primarily by the rebuilding of Europe. World War II was over. We were rebuilding Europe. Those European countries were losing their colonies. There was development going there. If you look at the United States, we were building highways, we were building roads. I guess highways are roads, right? I meant airports. We were doing a lot of infrastructure. We were doing a lot of building in the U.S. And we were seeing changes go on in technology. That was the 1945 to 1970. Standard Chartered Bank said in 2009 we began a third supercycle, which is being driven by the emerging nations. And if you look at what's going on, over half the world's GDP now is in those emerging nations. Just 50 years ago, half the world's GDP was the United States. And now half the world's GDP is those emerging nations, not counting Europe, not counting the advanced nations, but those emerging nations. They are growing and growing very fast. The prediction is by 2030, 93% of the world's middle class will live in those emerging nations. Now, middle class is a large category of people, just as it is in the U.S. You have a significant difference in income, but they're people that are not living at the subsistence level. That's happening in the rest of the world. We're in a time in which technology is coming. We're seeing disruptive technology that changes very fast. But it's not just in technology. It's in systems, it's in jobs, it's in everything. Where you look, we're seeing disruption happen. And I'm going to talk more about that later in the program. And you're going to hear one of my guests who's also got something to say about that. But there's a reason to look forward if we're really in this supercycle, and I believe we are. I believe we're in a secular bull market that could be the greatest bull market of our lifetime. It's going to be stronger than what we saw in 1982 to 2000. If you go back to 1966 and look at the companies that were part of the Dow, those companies, many don't exist today. And I'll talk about some of that later in the program as well. But I want to stop right now and shift gears and introduce you to my guest today. My guest is one of the leading companies, but the idea of this program is to bring you, the listener, insight into what's going on in industries, in companies, so that you can be ahead of the curve instead of behind the curve. And today's program really falls along that. The CEO and founder of BrainBox, Adam Nathan. Welcome to the program, Adam.
Oh, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on, Mike.
So, Adam, why don't we start with your background?
Sure. So, my company's background, we started about a decade ago.
But even going back before that.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I had a curious route to business intelligence and data warehousing. I actually, in college, I made a bet with a friend when I'd found out that somebody else went to Columbia in New York, had been in the movie Gremlins, and I thought, that's incredible. How can another student actually be in a movie? I thought those took place in Hollywood, and incredibly rashly, I bet that if I did 10 screen tests, I would end up in the movies. Well, I paid for the hubris, but I did actually end up in a couple films, which started a brutally difficult acting movie career. But to this day, my kids tell their friends, and people that know me know that I am in the Michael Jackson Bad video. So if you look for the full-length Bad video, you will see me not dancing with Michael, but high-fiving him. In fact, I'm probably one of the people who's high-fived him most in the whole world. We probably high-fived 15 or 20 times there in that shot. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
So you moved on from that, though.
I sure did. I actually, after the acting kind of withered away, I ended up back at film school in New York. And with a friend from film school, when we left, we created a business in Los Angeles to provide screenplay readers that work for production companies and major studios to read screenplays for people who were writing them in Des Moines or New Jersey, where I'm from, or Seattle, and people who wanted a break to get in the industry. And so we let them actually get a true sample of feedback from a real Hollywood reader. Our idea is that we were going to uncover tons and tons of gems and go on to, start DreamWorks too. We found one movie. It starred Melanie Griffith and Tom Berenger. It was called Reasonable Doubt. It did not pad our bank coffers, but it did go straight to video. But it can be found, and we were part of that story, and in our small way, proud of it.
I saw the movie.
Oh, okay, there you go. So, but from that work, the internet was coming along, and like everybody in those days that had an AOL account, we thought, wow, what could we do to create a website for our business? And we did, and it was like a one-page website. Younger listeners wouldn't even know what these early websites were like, but that led to a form where you could ask for information, which led to some back-end coding, which led to some database work, and I loved it. I loved that part of the company, particularly since we were making about 10 cents a year. At least acquisition of skills was a big part of that early effort. And from there, I moved on into career in IT, a long way from Russian language and literature, even further away from Michael Jackson and bad videos. And I love what I get to do now. Data is the foundation of businesses. The front ends, the mobile, the web apps, all of that comes and goes, but the data under the hood is what drives businesses and what creates possibility.
So let's talk about BrainBox.
Please, that's great. BrainBox is our goal is to help our customers work with their information. Our customers, nonprofits, major enterprise companies, mid-market companies, are swimming in information. They're trying to marry that data together to draw conclusions from it, to enrich it with other data that they buy, and there's enormous challenges creating value and learning from it. Customers often want very simple answers to things. They want a dashboard that'll show them margins or costs or whether expenses are declining or geographically where certain kinds of phenomena are taking place. We help them do that. We guide them to those solutions.
So give us some examples. Sure.
There's one particularly closely related to Seattle and our listenership here. The Gates Foundation about 6 years ago funded an academic data warehouse for the Seattle Public Schools, and BrainBox was brought in to design, implement, and deliver a data warehousing system that would take information from multiple places and bring it together in a way that district administrators and principals and other people could quickly understand the patterns that were taking place with their students, demographic issues under those. They could track coursework, they could track grades, and all of that information was floating around and existed, and we really started to harness that and bring it together. So that's an example. We had another company was trying to monetize content on the web. They had a great deal of content from magazine articles and other things that could be repurposed. And they knew that if they could drive a certain amount of traffic to these articles and then convert that traffic at a slightly higher rate, they could actually make a little almost arbitrage, little bump on every piece of content. And so we looked at doing that. This was actually kind of a big data problem long before even people called it big data. How do you do that at scale? How do you do that with thousands and thousands of pieces of content? How do you figure out how to dial up some, turn down others, increase your profits, cut your losses? So kind of some sophisticated problems as well. But the heart of what we do are help companies answer really basic questions. What's taken place? When did it? How did it? Which products? Some of these fundamental questions of what's taking place under their hood and on their watch are often not known. And I always rush to assure my clients, they always feel like their data is terrible. Oh, when you see our data, you'll understand that, oh, it's not like your other clients. It's like, oh, actually, it's exactly like our other clients. And so helping our customers go on that journey to organize that data, to bring it together, and to see it is our mission.
We're going to come back to this right after the break. It's interesting to see the amount of data that companies have and how they use it. Some use just an opinion, an idea, and some really use the facts to get to the real details and nitty-gritty of what's really going on. Stick around. We've got more to come. A lot more. Don't go away.
About Money with Mike Adams will resume in a moment on Business Radio 1300 KKOL. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
Creating and maintaining wealth has been the specialty of Adams Financial Concepts for over 20 years. Every portfolio managed by Adams Financial Concepts is customized to fit each particular client's objectives and risk tolerance. The client's interest always comes first in portfolio decisions. Call Mike Adams today at 206-903-1019 or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com to check out their AFC performance. They welcome your review. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
.net.
Now we return to About Money. There's more information waiting for you at adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Here again is your host, Mike Adams.
So I'm here with Adam Nathan of BrainBox. We're talking about BrainBox. I want to talk about it. Give us another example so that our listeners can understand where things are going and how economically this is an advantage to gather up all the data.
Sure. The two things actually come to mind that are really on the forefront of our minds right now. One is the competition for companies and organizations for resources that can design and build and deliver and administer these business intelligence data warehouse systems is enormous. There's simply not enough trained and skilled people to fill out all these positions, and because the systems are incredibly sophisticated, the resources are expensive. You need a lot of different kinds. There's a lot of specialties in it. There's architects and designers and people who are plumbing the data and testing it and so on. So it's become somewhat cost prohibitive to build out a team to deliver analytics to your managers and your knowledge workers. We see and think about every day, how do we shift that paradigm? How do we move this foundational platform of delivering information from a system that everybody is hiring for independently and designing independently and building out a sets of tools on their own to how do we deliver solutions in the cloud for our clients quickly, scalably, so that they're focused not on building architecture of data systems, but so they're focused on their information and the value of their data. We see in the next 9 months having an offering to get people in the cloud on incredibly scalable platforms in a week or two to get them started. So we're excited to be disrupting the old way of looking at things.
Mm-hmm. So you did a system for schools.
Yeah. So we have our first foray into products. We've done a lot of work with schools and educational data, and we are proud to present our first, our flagship baby, if such a thing could exist, Plinth, which is an analytics tool to help students and principals and guidance counselors understand the story of a student. The data exists for every child. Their coursework grades are out there somewhere, and their behavior information, positive and negative, is stored somewhere, and their attendance is somewhere. But it's very time-consuming for a teacher to really quickly pull that information together, see it, identify patterns, figure out where things take place, why they take place, when did things start happening, when did a change in a child's behavior or grades shift. And we've now put together an analytics platform built on Tableau software, which many people know we're a very proud partner of, that will let schools get that information without working at it. I've spoken with teachers who almost pride themselves on going home and spending 3 hours gathering and printing out reports so that they can have a conversation with a parent. We want to disrupt that. That's not okay. Teachers have a lot to do. Their focus should be on education, not information gathering. And we have better tools and ways of doing that. Plinth is our foray into that. Highline Public Schools is our first beta user of that technology, They're soon to roll that out for their beta team of principals, and it's exciting and disruptive, and we would love to share it with other school districts.
You know, my wife was a French teacher before she retired. Came to work for Adams Financial Concepts. So I understand a lot of what's going on, and the times when you have a student at risk or a student whose behavior changes, and the trying to put together a group of teachers, the principal, to try to intervene with the student and to direct the student back on path. It's a huge amount of data gathering that they go through, and very often spending probably 40 or 50 hours to do a 1-hour meeting.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's a non-starter problem. It's not effective for 4 teachers and a principal and a guidance counselor to have to spend multiple hours trying to find and discover the story of the children that they're trying to help. Our product, Plinth, what it lets them do is come into a room, have one user who can put up the same set of dashboards, of 5 dashboards on each child, where everybody recognizes how to read them. They're at kind of a USA Today level sophistication. This is not university graduate diploma statistics. This is something people can see and spot trends and understand. And that student intervention team can start discussing things with the parent or the child themselves in a much richer, more data-based way than ever. And we love being on the front lines of the students and teachers making a difference for themselves directly with data.
And I would imagine that, you know, when you have an intervention on a student, it's very infrequent because of the amount of time that goes into it. But if you have a very limited amount of time the teachers have to spend on it, they're able to cover a much broader group of students and
Yes.
give much greater guidance.
Yeah, they sure are. And if you don't have a really good historical picture on a child, and you don't have a known framework about how to get that information, you may be missing things for one reason or another. If you're a 9th grade teacher and you have a new child in your class that's struggling with math and maybe slightly disruptive, you might decide in your head, despite your best intentions, this child's not good at math. What we want that teacher to be able to see is at a glance go, whoa, wait a second. Last year was really strong. The last 3 years strong in math. The beauty of analytics and the ability to pull information together is to help teachers have those insights, see that, and particularly in student intervention teams where we're focused now, as a group, learn that together and have the right kind of conversations with their kids and the parents of them.
You know, I think that's a product where you can really see time saving. But I want to shift over to the business side, because I think the same thing applies in businesses. When you have people that come together to meetings to solve a problem, people gathering a huge amount of information and spend time so that they debate a question, and people coming from different angles and seeing different data. It's, you know, as we sit here in the studio, I'm looking at one wall, you're looking at a different wall, and if somebody asks us to describe the wall, our opinions are going to be completely different because we're looking at 2 different walls. But when you have, it seems to me like what you're doing is bringing together the data so that everyone's looking at the same thing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We want to create the context for a powerful conversation, so that people have shared information, so that it's not about anecdote or hearsay or hunches. There's that great quote from, I think it was the founder of Netscape. If we have data, let's look at data. If all we have are opinions, let's go with mine. And we want to make sure people are looking at data. Data doesn't solve everything. It's not a cure-all. It doesn't always tell you what to do, but it informs the right people who know how to have the right conversations in a powerful and effective way.
So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you and do an analysis of their own situation, if they've got tons of data that they don't know what to do with, how would they do that?
So we've actually created a tool for just that reason. Many listeners may be responsible for providing analytics and information to their companies. Maybe they're running a business intelligence team or a reporting team, or they're a CFO or in different positions. And often it's hard to know how well you're doing. How effective are you in satisfying people's needs? How are your peers doing? How do you stack up against them? And we've created a tool called the BrainBox 5x5 BI Assessment. It's a complimentary online tool that takes about 5 or 10 minutes to go through. And you answer 25 different questions across 5 areas. And we provide a report from that, a 10-page report actually, that looks and makes recommendations on each of those areas, establishes the maturity of where you are in your organization, and becomes the foundation for hopefully a great conversation internally for you and your own team and fellow managers on it, but also if you're interested for us directly with BrainBox to see how we might support a company in their strategic roadmap, in working with data and moving to the cloud and SharePoint and recruiting, all the lines of business that we can help people with.
So how would somebody contact you?
Here's how the easiest way to contact us is to go to teambrainbox.com, team as in the Seahawks, brainbox.com. Our contact information is there. You can reach us on our Contact Us form. And you also can reach me, if you're a listener of this show, at Nathan, A as in Adam, Nathan, at teambrainbox.com. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to talk about your data challenges and where you are and share our assessment with you. And if you're a school district principal, I will come and with delight share what we've done and see if it could have a home in your school or district.
Very good.
Thanks so much.
And so do that. I think we're living in an age where there's a tremendous amount of data. If you go back before the computer, people were working on those green pads to put down numbers. Since that time, we've come up with huge amounts of data. And I see it in my industry where people make all sorts of conclusions about what the market's going to do, about what stocks are going to do, which are totally, absolutely dumb. How can I say it any other way? They use specific data, which isn't long enough, or it's too short, or it's the wrong data. They draw wrong conclusions. They don't take into consideration a lot of other things. So having the right data and analyzing it correctly makes all the difference in the world. So BrainBox, Adam, thanks for being here.
Yes, it does. A pleasure to be on the show.
We're coming up to another break. Don't go away, because I want to talk about, well, you'll hear. Don't go away. We've got more to come.
More About Money coming up with Mike Adams on Business Radio 1300 KKOL. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
Lots of people manage investment portfolios. Just a few can manage a successful portfolio and provide exceedingly great service to their clients. Here's Mike Adams from Adams Financial Concepts.
We believe the price you pay should be based on the performance of your portfolio and the quality of service you receive.
Mike, it seems that a lot of companies subscribe to the one-size-fits-all mentality of investing. Does one size really fit all?
Not with us. Every portfolio that we manage is customized to fit each particular client's objectives and risk tolerance. We place our clients' interests first in all portfolio decisions.
If you're looking for a home for your 7-figure plus investment portfolio, call Mike Adams of Adams Financial Concepts, specializing in creating and maintaining wealth for over 20 years. 206-903-1019. That's 206-903-1019. Or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
About Money continues. Remember the website adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Here's Mike.
So, I'm back again. I wanted to remind you one more time, B47 Studios, they're offering a 15% discount off any projects booked this month or next month. All you have to do is say you heard about it on Adams Financial Concepts or About Money. They have an accomplished staff of filmmakers, designers, writers, editors, producers. They do print, they do broadcast. They're architects of moving images. Just say you heard about it on About Money. They do a tremendous job. And so give them a look. Go to their website. Look and see what they can do for you. Anyway, I got my MBA. Now, it was actually called an MSIA in those days, at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh's location is at the confluence where the Monongahela and the Allegheny come together and form the Ohio River. And during those days was before they were really doing a lot of pollution. Actually, it had just begun. And if you can go onto Mount Washington, which is like going to Somerset Hill, it's not a huge mountain. They call it a Mount Washington, but it's kind of like a hill. Looking down into Pittsburgh, you could watch the smokestacks from J&L Steel, and they had these flames that roared up at night. It was gorgeous. It's one of the most beautiful sights I ever saw. That was the steel mills, and that area of Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania dominated the world steel market. From World War II until the 1970s, the United States absolutely dominated everything in the steel market. You know, if you look at the Dow from those times of the 1960s and 1970s, you had U.S. Steel, you had Bethlehem Steel, you had Allegheny, Inland Steel, J&L Steel. You went down a whole list of steel stocks, and it was creating a lot of wealth. It created a lot of wealth for investors, small investors, large investors. It was a dominating industry. But remember, I talked about the supercycle, 1945 to 1970. The world was rebuilding after World War II. And while the U.S. steel makers were making small improvements, the rest of the world was beginning to build steel plants, which were making dramatic, disruptive changes. I started my career in the aluminum industry, and I can remember the continuous casting. When you're making aluminum, you pull the aluminum, you siphon it out of the furnaces, you put it into other furnaces, and you then pour it into huge ingots. You ship the ingots off to a rolling mill or to a tube mill, and you reheat that metal, and you roll it into sheets, or you roll it into whatever forms. But it's a process of cooling down the metal, making an ingot, and then having to reheat the ingot to make another product. Continuous casting is taking the aluminum from those aluminum furnaces, pouring it into a casting machine, and making wire or making rod or making sheet directly without going through that step of making the ingot, shipping the ingot somewhere else to be made into another product. That's what was happening. You had steel mills being built worldwide that were competing with the U.S. mills, and by eliminating steps and becoming more efficient, they were suddenly making steel cheaper than it was being made in the U.S. And the U.S. steel mills were finding, as we got into the 70s and 80s, that they were not able to compete price-wise with what was going on in the rest of the world. So what did they do? Improve the process? No. What they did is they turned to Washington, and they asked Washington and the politicians in Washington to put tariffs on imported steel. So it made the foreign steel more expensive coming into the country. It made it worldwide. Those companies that were competing on a worldwide, outside the U.S. basis, they were competing and making products which the finished product could be shipped into the U.S. at a cheaper price than we could make it here. But we were putting on tariffs instead of making real innovation. They were making small improvements. And instead of innovation, we were seeking protection. You know, we live in a world today of disruptive technology. And when you hear about companies that are going to Washington or companies that want to slow things down, they're the companies that are going to go the way of the steel mill. Think about that. Think of the steel mills. U.S. Steel, Bethlehem Steel, Allegheny Steel, Inland Steel, J&L Steel. Do any of those companies ring a bell? Most of them are gone. Most of them have been replaced. They're replaced because they didn't see what was going on. You know, disruption is the new buzzword, but it's real. And it's a real world problem right now because it's disruption not just in the U.S., but it's happening worldwide. Think about the phone. Think about what's gone on. AT&T came out with their Princess phone and the black phone. And then you had a little company called Palm that came out with a phone. If you had a Palm, I remember having a Palm with a stylus and you squiggled on the screen. You know, who remembers that? Most kids don't remember that anymore. But companies, you know, that became a major breakthrough, that little handheld phone. Then you had BlackBerry that came along and said goodbye to Palm. BlackBerry replaced Palm. And then you had Apple that came along and said goodbye to BlackBerry. And Apple brought something new. They brought the touchscreen. They brought the apps. They brought a lot of new technology. It was all disruptive, but it's really changed. I carry around a phone that has the computing power of computers that I first learned to compute on. We used to use punch cards, stick punch cards and, you know, punch those cards, stick it into the computer. And the computers used to be, I don't know, 10 feet by 10 feet by 6 feet high. They had all these tubes and so on. Now I carry around a thing in my pocket, which is tiny. I can remember getting my first calculator. You know, it was bigger than my current phone. It was like a couple of inches high. It was 4 or 6 inches long. It was probably 4 inches wide and 6 or 8 inches long. It added, subtracted, multiplied, and divided, and that was it. There was no memory. There was nothing else. Now I have something that I carry in my pocket that has computing power. But more than that, it connects to the internet. It connects to so many things. That's disruptive technology. We're living in an age of disruptive technology. Heard somebody make the comment. Now, you have toddlers that will walk along, and if the TV is off, they'll rub their hand against the TV, and if it doesn't come on, they'll say broken. I mean, what kind of a world do we live in? It's an incredible world. And things are changing. And as investors, we need to stay up with that, because we talk about the blue chip stocks. The blue chips become black and blue. They get bypassed. New companies come. They will come. We're living in an age of the super cycle. Look forward to it. Yes, we're going through a correction, but when the correction's over, we've got a lot more to go. Focus on the long term, not on the short term, because there is so much more to come. It's going to make life easier. It's going to make life more efficient. It's going to make life really, relatively easy. But that's coming. Don't go away. Stay with it. Stay with your investments. And that wraps up this program. Have a very good weekend. And if you do listen to the radio, I'll be at the Puyallup Fair tomorrow. So anyway, that's tomorrow. Have a great weekend. And I will be back next Friday.
You've been listening to About Money with Mike Adams, a registered investment advisor. If you'd like more information about what you heard today, or about Mike's investment philosophy and strategy, or if you want Mike to evaluate your own portfolio, click on AdamsFinancialConcepts.com. That's AdamsFinancialConcepts.com. The information shared on the preceding program was for educational purposes only, and any investment advice given may not be suitable for all investors. Join us again next Friday afternoon at 3 for more About Money with Mike Adams, here on Business Radio 1300 KKOL.
The preceding program was sponsored by Adams Financial Concepts. Creating and maintaining wealth has been the specialty of Adams Financial Concepts for over 20 years. Every portfolio managed by Adams Financial Concepts is customized to fit each particular client's objectives and risk tolerance. The client's interest always comes first in portfolio decisions. Call Mike Adams today at 206-903-1019 or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com to check out their AFC performance. They welcome your review. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com.